is it. I want to stay where it's home. The church here is, I've been going to the same church for 50 years. My doctor's in this area, and it's not only the house you live in, the area is important.
Housing is a right. It's not an option. Housing is a right for everybody on this earth. That's one of the commandments.
All the international agreements ever since the very first one, which is recent, 40-some years ago, the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, have always included the right to housing as a basic fundamental human right. You can't deny people that, and societies must supply that to people.
Therefore, those who build housing should have it spelled out that it's a right. It's not developers making bucks.
We develop where there is money to be made.
The big problem right now is the private developers, the private marketplace is saying categorically, we will not build rental housing. It is not lucrative enough for us.
Developers operating on their own money or the bank's money don't make any money out of building for poor people.
In the last couple of years, a number of things have happened in Vancouver. The population has increased very quickly. At the same time, the amount of rental housing being built has virtually become stagnant. At the same time, we've experienced demolition of existing rental housing, so at a time of population increase and incredible demand, we've actually lost existing rental housing through demolition.
And we've seen evictions in other neighborhoods, demolitions and conversions, force people throughout Vancouver to move around. And unfortunately, a lot of people have found themselves, and this is families as well, living in hotels in the downtown east side because there is absolutely nothing else available.
Maybe once a week I'll have like either a family or a single mom with 4 kids. The housing stock around here is hotel rooms. They're small. We're talking about 10 by 12 rooms. What am I supposed to do with them? That's the worst thing.
For families, it's just totally outrageous that they're being forced to live in these conditions. Very unsafe. Sometimes the mother and a daughter live on one floor in one room, and the father and the son live on another floor in another room. I mean, it begins the breakup of the entire family.
Whenever I hear relocation, it's sort of like cattle cars, You just basically throw people in it and say, okay, you go somewhere else. But there are attachments to communities. People's lives are there, and they put a lot into that community. And the devastation that we dealt with as far as, people who had been relatively healthy at 75 years old and then 3 or 4 weeks later being ill and then 3 months later being dead was a reality.
Well, he's been in that room for 15 years. He's got it set up very nicely. Everything's just where he wants it. He knows where his friends are. And what people don't realize, it seems, is that a lot of these people, they are elderly people, they've been here all their lives. This is their neighborhood. They've lived here for 40 or 50 or 60 years in this neighborhood.
And the poor in this city deserve to live in this city and not be hoisted out to Chilliwack.
Why? Why do they deserve to? Tell me why they deserve.
Why? Because they're God's children.
Why can't God's children live in Chilliwack?
Why should they be bulldozed 80 miles out of where their neighborhood has been, their acquaintances have been, their friendships have been, the graves of their fathers and mothers are? Who would dictate that they be pitched out like that?
Like we did have to evict a number of single mothers on welfare with children, of course. And we just explained to them the facts of life that this particular building had to come down because it was making room for 70 townhouses where we only had 8 apartments.
Your fundamental safety is your home. And when you're going to be shoved out of that, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are or, that your reason sort of leaves you.
Well, as a developer, I don't feel anything because, they have to go so we can get on with what we're going to do. Personally, I may feel a little sympathy towards their problems, but it isn't anything that I am personally going to get involved with solving.
I'm not a crier. I seldom ever weep. In fact, when my husband died, both my children were in their 20s, and they realized they'd never seen me cry. And yet I cried for hours. when I knew that I was going to have to look for another place. That wasn't in my plans. My plans were to stay there, always, the rest of my life. It was home. You know, it's a security. As long as you pay your rent, you're safe.
No, personally, we would never get involved in a project where we had to get involved in relocating the tenants, even if we knew there would be places for them to go to.
Why is that?
Because it's not part of our business plan to spend our time and money doing that. And the law does not require it.
Did you get angry at these people who were
yes, very, very angry. Really a terrible anger. You feel all the symptoms of grief. You really feel you're frightened, you're angry, you're hurt. You go through all those things.
So developers are not social workers, but they got to have a heart. Get out of the game if you haven't got a heart.
Well, if you're going to develop in Vancouver, you are basically looking at buying up a block of old houses which are ready to fall down anyway. And then, if you are smart, and I'm sure they will be commencing in the future, those houses are coming down the day after the people move out. So this situation had developed in the East End, where these houses were left vacant after the owners moved and were basically seized by these squatters. It's not going to happen again.
I see the squatter issue as the ultimate conclusion of no housing policy and demolitions of perfectly good housing in the city.
So if there's a lack of leadership in a city which allows good quality units to sit empty for any number of time, any amount of time, during a severe housing crisis, you're only begging for such an action to take place.
You know, the 6 houses sat there empty. So the people went in and they started living there, right? The people who needed housing. Now, as for the city and the police's response to that, I mean, it's totally outrageous, and I think everyone pretty well agrees.
I mean, we would have just sent in a bulldozer and flattened them. If it didn't get out of the way, that's their problem.
There have been terms like overkill, state of siege. What we had in the beginning were 6 empty and boarded up houses. We ended up the other day in a street scene that had 80 riot police, 2 helicopters, fire equipment, ambulances, front-end loaders, demolition crews, and you had 7 or 8 in the end squatters on a barricade, right? Who they said were armed, and no arms were found. So you have to start treating the existing housing stock as an invaluable resource. You don't treat it as something that someone can just come in and buy up and rip down.
Defensive measures are used in any business, and developers learn very fast. Bad publicity is bad publicity, and nobody's going to squat on an empty piece of ground.
The solution is very simple. People should not be allowed to have a demolition permit until they have a development permit. So they have to have their financing in line, they have to have their permission from the city to develop, and then they can demolish the property and build whatever they're going to build. But until then, the unit stays occupied and remains in the rental stock.
They can't just, sit on the land. We're in a housing crisis, and drastic measures have to be taken.
Something's got to give. I don't know what it's going to be or when. Something's got to change.
Vancouver, if we don't watch it, will become what New York has and what Toronto is quickly becoming, a city of stark contrasts.
You certainly have your downtimes, but we've had a number of successes. I mean, right across the street behind me is Tellier Tower, and Tellier Tower is 90 units of seniors housing, and you go in there, and it's fantastic. I've had people who have lived 20 or 30 years in a hotel, and they walk into the room for the first time, when they get a place like that, and they just break down crying. They can't believe that this is all theirs.
Older people, as a rule, don't protest at what's happening. They go along with it. And if I hadn't joined this Concerned Citizens organization over at the center, I wouldn't have either. But going there and going to the meetings and talking with people and has made me feel that I can fight back, and I have fought back.